October 27th, 2020, Ames Area Metropolitan Planning Organization Transportation Policy Committee meeting to order. Meeting council and committee members. And tonight we have one item on the agenda, that is a hearing on a final Metropolitan Transportation Plan Forward 45. So I'm going to turn it over to Damien and also to the HDR representative for any comments and input, and then also we'll go to questions then from the committee members.
Absolutely. Thank you. So tonight, what we're going to do is there's not going to be a formal presentation of the plan. That was the last meeting. I think it's important to point out that we've had the plan out for at least 30 days for public comment. So attached to the policy committee action form, we included a summary of all the staff comments, the interagency comments, and public comments, and how they were addressed. So really tonight, it's if there's any minor corrections or clarifications that the policy committee needs before a vote takes place, we want to make sure that those questions get answered. But otherwise, we would entertain an approval of the plan or an approval with modifications as voted upon by the policy committee.
Okay. We'll open it up for questions. I do have a couple of questions myself, but first, let's see if anyone else has questions this evening. Couple of quick questions on the comments. Damien, on page it's 215 of the council packet. It'll be the first page of comments on the draft MTP. On the ISU comment, it says 16th Street from University Boulevard to Apple Place should be shown as a committed project. Should that be South 16th Street?
It is. Yeah, it's south. It's the university-owned segment of South 16th from University over to, well, really it's to the old railroad right-of-way where we're doing that trail project.
Okay, all right. So that it was shown correctly. It's just the comment said 16th Street. So I thought, well, there's two 16th Streets in Ames. That's all.
Yeah, and we talked with ISU staff. They were just concerned, since we've been coordinating on that project with the Ames capital improvement plan. They wanted to make sure that we were on the same page and nothing was missed. But we have it corrected.
And that was also something that this policy committee has already reviewed prior. It's not that Iowa State moved it up. It was actually something which has been a priority of this group, correct?
Absolutely. It's always been a priority right after the extension of Grand Avenue. We knew that once Grand Avenue is connected down to South 16th Street, that this would be a need that would arise after it. So it's just over time, it's risen to the top.
And the only question I have is on the side ride comment regarding the transit asset management plan. Can you comment on what that included, or it's this third comment on the same page?
Well, I can't get too deep into the detail without asking SciRide staff, but one of the requirements of the long-range plan is that we include information on the transit agency's assets, and they're required to maintain this transit asset management plan. One of the performance measures that the MPO, the greater MPO, has to do is transit as asset management targets, TAM targets, as they're referred to. I don't know if Brian wants to add any more detail about the federal requirements related to including what the transit agency has in our plan, in the long range plan.
Yeah, so there's a federal requirement, and what they've done is kind of identified what of the federal requirements where you actually have to report what your target is for these different items, and SciRide develops their own transit asset management plan. And so basically what we do as a part of the long range transportation plan is carry that information forward into the long range transportation plan. And so they were developed by SciRide, and SciRide had just gone through a process of updating their transit asset management plan, which identified new targets. However, those targets have not been approved by the MPO yet. And so it was determined that we would go ahead and leave the targets as is until the MPO has officially approved the new targets that were set up in the SIRIDE's Transit Asset Management Plan. So,
and one thing I would point out is that the vast majority of SIRIDE's assets obviously are the age of their buses, their rolling stock. So those targets are mainly related to how old the buses are and when they need to turn those over.
Very good. I have no further questions. If there's no other further questions, I'm going to have to open up the public hearing. I declare the public hearing on the final Metropolitan Transportation Plan, known as Forward 45, to be open. And I'm presuming that Susan or Deb are monitoring our participants. Is there anyone who has raised their hand showing interest in addressing the committee regarding this master plan?
I do not see anybody wanting to speak.
Thank you, Deb. I'll declare the public hearing to be closed, and I would entertain a motion adopting a resolution approving the plan.
I move to adopt alternative 1.
Moved by Lightwood,
Second.
second by Betcher. Thank you. Any discussion?
This is Loris. I just have a question about then how will elements of this plan be put into the 2040 comprehensive plan, or will they?
Well, the 2040 Ames 2040 plan, the land use policy plan, informed, so it provided all the background information for the long range plan in order to project growth out. So it was really, it's more of that the comprehensive plan is saying what the future land use and the growth areas and when it will happen, some of the timing. What the difference is that the long range plan stops off 25 years. I believe the comp plan actually might project land use growth beyond 25 years. So it's more that the land use plan informs this plan, and we respond to the demand of commercial growth, residential growth, and so on.
Thanks, Damian. Thank you.
Kelly, you jumped on, I saw. Do you want to make any comment on that?
Nope, I think Damian got it just right.
All right, good. Thank you. All right. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed or abstaining this evening? Hearing none, motion carried unanimously. We'll go through now to policy committee comments. We'll start with David. Anything for you tonight?
No, thank you.
Tim?
Thank you.
Bronwyn?
No, thank you.
Loris?
Yes, I'd like to say that it's been an interesting 4 years. I've enjoyed sitting with you guys on this group. I've learned a lot about transit. I'll probably still follow from afar as I move forward. So, but this is my last meeting, so I wish you all the best.
Well, I think I say on behalf of the committee, thank you, Loris, for your service on this committee, and we wish you well and in your next endeavors, and always welcome your input and questions.
Thanks.
Rachel?
Nothing tonight.
Bill?
No comment.
How about you, Amber?
Nothing for me.
All right. Jacob?
No comment.
All right. And Gloria?
No, thank you.
All right. Very good. Thank you all for meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Move this bill.
We'll let Loris have the official recognition of calling us adjourned. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and have a good rest of the evening. Council will give it a few minutes, and then we'll go ahead and we'll, about a couple minutes, we'll go ahead and begin our regular council meeting. Council meeting for Tuesday, October 27th to order. Good evening, Council. I will bring your attention that we are working from an amended agenda. The first item is under item numbers, just beyond after number 7. We've added resolution appointing Dawson Weathers to serve on the Property Maintenance Appeals Board. And on our item number 21, we corrected the date of continued hearing on the agenda. And this evening we are conducting our city council meeting electronically as allowed by Iowa code due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And you will find online on the city website under city council meetings agenda for a listing of how to join either by Zoom using toll-free number. And you can also watch our meeting on channel 12 MediaCom or our website or on YouTube. So for the first item of business this evening, we have to read a proclamation on Lung Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death among men and women in the United States and in Ames in 2020, accounting for more deaths than colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer combined. And whereas, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, there were 217 new lung cancer cases and 137 deaths because of lung cancer between 2013 and 2017 in Story County. And whereas the 5-year survival rate for localized lung cancer is approximately 59%, yet only approximately 17% of lung cancers are diagnosed at this stage. And whereas organizations working in the Ames community, such as the American Lung Cancer Screening Initiative and Women's Lung Cancer Forum, are committed to educating about lung cancer and lung cancer screening and working to increase lung cancer screening rates in Iowa. Therefore, I, John A. Hala, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim the month of November 2020 as Lung Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Ames. I'd like to recognize the need for research in lung cancer affecting women and lung cancer health disparities and encourage all citizens to learn about lung cancer and early detection through lung cancer screening. And I believe that Alexandra Potter is receiving this proclamation electronically, and we'll see you get a hard copy. And I'd like to share a few thoughts. Alexandra, we welcome you to do so.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, John Solit, he worked with Amy, I believe, to get this proclamation declared. And so he has class right now, but we appreciate his work, and we appreciate you guys and all of your work for helping us raise awareness for lung cancer and lung cancer screening. And so as you read the proclamation, you probably understand the 3 main points that we wanted to get across here. And the first one is that lung cancer is very common and it's very fatal. You know, it's the second most common if you don't consider skin cancer, and it's the most fatal. Something that we actually didn't address in our proclamation is that lung cancer in never smokers, people who have never smoked, It's actually the 6th leading cause of cancer-related death in the U.S. Every year, 28,000 people who have never smoked will die from lung cancer. That means more people who have never smoked will die from lung cancer than those who die from leukemia. So it's a very common and it's a very fatal disease. And it's important to recognize that it affects everyone. It's not just people who smoke. It's not just elderly folks. It's everyone. And so we need awareness for everyone. The other main point is that lung cancer screening offers a significant reduction in mortality, right? We mentioned 33%, which is huge. If the American Lung Cancer Association, the American Lung Association says that if we were to screen every single person right now, we would save 48,000 lives. However, right now the national screening rate is 4.2%, which is very low, in comparison to your screening rates for breast cancer, for colon cancer, for cervical cancer screening. Those are like 60 to 80%. So when we see the 4.2% screening rate for lung cancer, and we see the potential that it could save so many American lives, it's really frustrating for us, and it's really important and critical that we raise awareness. So we are so appreciative of you all for working with us, and thank you so much.
So how can someone get screened for lung cancer, Alexandra, here in Ames?
So in Ames, Iowa, I do not know if you have lung cancer screening centers around. However, to get screened for lung cancer, somebody would need to talk to their primary care provider. There's a process that they have to go through. It's called the shared decision-making process. Then the primary care provider will refer the patient to a lung cancer screening center, in which they will undergo a low-dose CT scan. And that's the process. So as an organization, we're looking to help communities in any possible way that we can to increase the screening rate. So if you have any suggestions for us for how we could help your community, we are more than happy in all ears for that.
Well, this is kind of personal for me from the standpoint that this summer we lost a very dear friend to lung cancer who was a never smoker. And once she was diagnosed, she lived for about 3 to 4 years, and then it did take her life. And so it's not just making up numbers. It's very, very sad, and it's very traumatic. And so we appreciate all your efforts, Alexandra, and please give our thanks also to I believe it's John. Is that right? Yeah, for his help as well too. So and we'll see to you that you get the signed proclamation, the original. All right.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for your loss, but I think it shows all the more importance that we do everything we can as an organization and as a community to see how we can raise awareness and increase the screening rate from 4.2% to higher. We can only go up from here. So yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, you too. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Does council wish to pull any items from consent? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve consent agenda as amended.
Move consent.
Second.
All right, Garten and Betcher, thank you. Roll call, please.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and open up public forum. This is a time that we set aside for comments from the general public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. No actions will be taken on comments at the meeting due to the requirements of open meetings law. So, Deb, is there anybody who's indicated a desire to address council under public forum this evening?
I do not see anyone there.
Okay, thank you. We will close public forum and move on to item number 17. Baker subdivision, low-income housing tax credit development proposals. Kelly and Vanessa.
Good evening, Council. I'm going to start off just talking about just kind of an overview of how we got to where we are tonight. And then Kelly is going to go into more details about the proposal. You know, we worked with you this past year, and in July, you directed us to move toward preparing an RFP. And so that's what we ended up doing. And we sent that RFP out the first part of August, and they were due back September 17th. And we were laid out some objectives for receiving that RFP, and that was to be based on family-based affordable housing, development 15 to 50 units, have a very comparable design with the surrounding neighborhood and elements, and then be highly competitive project for receiving tax credit funding through the Iowa Finance Authority. And we were delighted to receive 7 proposals. We were like really great. And I'd like to thank all the ones who submitted a proposal and would be interested in partnering with us, because this is our first adventure. So getting 7 was really a good number to deal with. So after we set up a committee, and the committee started looking at the criteria based on what we put in the RFP, and it just became apparent that in order to score well with IFA tax credits, you had to have a score of at least 155 or higher. So in looking at all of those, we then compiled the information based on that criteria, based on the number of units that they would be building, based on the percents of affordable housing that would be in there, of course, based on design and layout, and then looking at the scoring as well. So what you have in front of you and what's been out on our webpage is the 7 proposals, each one separately. And then we did a spreadsheet that kind of combined all of that information so that people could view what we were looking at to kind of condense getting an idea. And so we are going to discuss with you tonight the 2 proposals that we had recommended, which was MVHA and Prairie Fire development. So Kelly, you want to take it from there?
I still need to get screen sharing to whoever's hosting. There we go. All right, so as Vanessa said, we're really going to focus on what we're recommending as the top 2 proposals for the project. We offered up the 2.81 acre site that we left as part of the Baker subdivision for development. And when we asked for direction in the RFP, we gave very basic guidance, really establishing the range of units that was acceptable, a limit of 3 stories, a focus on family housing, and then also looking for compatible neighborhood design. And it was very open on what that meant. So really our 2 recommendations, we think they're both very good proposals meeting our objectives in the RFP, but they are distinct design differences between the 2 for the council to evaluate. So with MVAH, we really have the largest project that was proposed. They went with a more traditional kind of apartment and townhome look. It's a mix of brick and fiber cement siding materials. These are common materials in LIHTC. LIHTC scoring gives benefits to design features that are higher quality than basic building materials. So each proposal usually would use these types of materials. So we were kind of looking more at design and style than we necessarily were at materials for the most part. So the project has 50 units in it. And you can see in the layout that it's really designed around a central parking area. As we noted in the staff report, we did look at this through a development review committee perspective, trying to just initially gauge the feasibility of the project. For the most part, this project is probably going to be consistent with your normal RM zoning standards. There'll need to be some adjustments probably for the landscaping or for some of the parking locations. But for the most part, it really is a project that would meet our basic RM zoning standards. The second project we looked at was Prairie Fire. This development group took a completely different look at the property and really, instead of focusing on centralized parking and how to get a maximum number of units on the property, they looked at it from a different perspective of how do they engage the project with Tripp Street. And they used a mix of housing units as well with apartments and townhomes. They have 36 units in the project instead of 50. But otherwise it's very similar than the idea that there's some open space, there's a play area, there's a community room in both projects. MVH as a larger project had some other attributes and features that they offered to their residents. But from a style design perspective, Prairie Fire obviously took a different approach. And then from the architecture, it takes a more contemporary look. It might not read well on here, but for the most part, the first level is brick, and then the upper levels are cement fiberboard siding as well. So from this design, again, you have 36 units, a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units, just like MBA. So for us, we felt the applicants both in different ways addressed the objectives in the RFP, had a different idea of how to do the site. And we think that both teams are going to be able to put forward a strong project and be very competitive at the state level. I can add one other thing about Prairie Fire. In the report, we noted that we can only really support their proposal if they could get up to 155 points, as MVH has indicated they can. They did communicate with us on Monday morning and updated some construction cost estimating, and they do now believe that they can get the extra point from IFA to raise their total to 155 points as well. So with that, I think that's the overview of the 2 sites and staff's perspective kind of on the process, and we're looking for questions from council.
Thank you, Kelly and Vanessa. All right, questions for staff on these top two ranked proposals?
Kelly, I had 2 questions if I could. When we were looking at the subdivision earlier in this process, one of the things that we talked about was the amount of tax subsidy that would be required per lot. And it was a bit daunting for all of us because we were looking at a somewhere between $75,000 and $90,000 subsidy per lot. And I tried to look through this and figure this out, and you and I had a chance to visit on the phone, and I think I was doing this wrong. But could you help us think about what are we looking at as a subsidy for per unit, and how do we go about doing that?
You're muted, Kelly.
So in my view of this, there's clearly some distinct costs that should be assigned solely to the single family development components, and they shouldn't really be part of this equation. So for me, I think the main value here is what is the land worth, the 2.81 acres, because essentially everyone is asking for that for free. Prairie Fire offered $2,500 as a token amount. MVH would like it to be free. That land value, if you just look at what we spent to acquire it, it's over $150,000 of land value. The market value may be higher than that, but that was our acquisition cost. And then I think you should also consider Tripp Street. The extension at Tripp Street was something that had to occur for this lot to exist. And maybe not all of that should be attributed to the site, but it's a lot easier for the math if you assume that $500,000 was also something that you could look at for this. So for us, those are both federal funds that were used. There weren't local tax dollars used for that. There is some general obligation bond money that is in the overall project, but really we were looking at federal funds. So what I would say is that you would first look at those acquisition and infrastructure costs. And then the other thing that's different between the 2 projects is how much home funds they're asking for. So the home fund request for MVAH is $400,000, or about $8,000 per unit. And Prairie Fire is asking for $250,000 of home funds, or about $6,950 per unit. So overall, you're looking at, on a per unit basis between the 2, MVAH is about 20% less per unit than Prairie Fire, kind of wrapping all these costs together. And it's mostly federal funds. And then we're looking, so that's somewhere between 20 to 25,000 per unit between the 2 proposals. Tim, you're muted.
Thank you. So the second question I had, when this project is going to be done, who's going to own the land? Who's going to own the project?
The developer, we will be deeding the land to the developer prior to construction starting.
So this is going to be a taxable, this project will eventually make its way onto the tax rolls. Could you give us a sense of the impact on the tax rolls between the two projects?
It's a little more complicated than I would have first said. So there are construction estimates as part of each proposal. And the project cost is not going to be the taxable value of the project. But if we assume, let's just say they were, for comparative sake, Prairie Fire is about a $7.9 million project cost, and MVH is about $10.3 million. But what actually will be the taxable value is likely going to be the income of the project. So since it's a low income project, they'll approach the assessor and look for some modifications based on the fact that they don't generate market level income necessarily. But it'll still be proportional to the number of units. So in general, the more units that are on a site, the more property tax that is generated. That is pretty common across the city.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions or comments?
Kelly or Vanessa, can you say anything about the projected construction schedules? They seem to be, I guess, relatively close, but there are enough differences in them. I'm just wondering whether both of those seem to be realistic, given what's being constructed.
I'll take a stab at it. Vanessa can chime in if she wants, because there's kind of two components to the schedule. There's really kind of three big steps, right? There's award, then there's finalizing design, and then there's starting construction. And then the other part of that is getting to full occupancy or getting it up and running. And each of those entities kind of had the same basic start to the project in terms of getting a decision from IFA, entering into a final agreement with us, and getting their construction financing and final building permits. And then the construction timeframes are similar. That lease up expectation, different people had different expectations on the final lease up, or maybe how conservative they were on how long it would take to fill the units. We thought that from a construction schedule perspective, we were pretty comfortable that those were reasonable projections to basically be up and available for tenancy in the spring or early summer of it was 2020. I'm getting my years mixed up. 2023, correct?
Yes.
Did you want to add anything on the lease up side, Vanessa?
I believe as we talked to them, they really talked about the mechanism they would go about trying to lease up the units, advertising, working with local housing authorities and so forth. So they both had pretty similar approaches as to how they would go about finding people to lease up, qualify, and all those things. So it was pretty typical for what they're trying to do when you first open up a apartment complex.
Okay, thank you. And with regard to the management of the projects, MVAH seems to manage their own projects, and Prairie Fire is planning to enter into a joint venture with somebody else, and so they do not do the management of their own properties. Is that right? And do we have any concerns about the difference between self-managed versus partnership management?
Kelly, you want to tackle that one first?
Well, I'll say that a lot of the organization behind these things are all designed to get points from IFA. So Prairie Fire is pretty clear that they're going to form a general partnership with a nonprofit, which helps them get a point in the system by having a nonprofit involved. I think we focused on understanding their property management experience. And as you noted, MVH is what we'd say is a vertically integrated company. They're gonna develop it, construct it, and operate it. Prairie Fire partners on aspects of that. They stay as as a general partner in the project, but they contract the management out. And that's just a question of how you want to operate your company. Do you want to be large enough to do it all yourself, or do you need to use partnerships or property management relationships? I think one thing we had in each of the interviews was a question about on-site management, how they would go about responding to tenants' needs. And they each have some component of on-site management, but they do not have a full-time manager that'll be there every day of the week. Part of that's project scale in terms of what can you afford to have in terms of that. So a maintenance call requests or property management requests, it won't be someone necessarily there every day, all day, but they do have access to those things either in town or from other resources in the area.
Thank you.
Vanessa, did you on the property management side?
Well, you know, I'm familiar with working with both sides, and you know, if they contract out, and we looked at, I've worked with both kinds, and so if they have a good contract company that's been in the business and experience, it can run smoothly as one in-house. In-house, of course, you have more advantage because you know everything in-house, and your staff and people are always there. So, you know, as long as it's a good system, it should work.
Okay, other questions for Kelly or Vanessa? All right, council. We are going to allow public input this evening, but I think before we do that, I'd be interested to kind of get some initial thoughts from the council, so people could hear where you may be, what your thoughts are on the different opportunities here, and then we'll go to public input, and then we'll come back to you for a direction for staff.
I like the Prairie Fire development primarily because I think it breaks up the space better from my perspective, and not having the traditional apartment complex look around a central parking lot, but having more of the green space on the outsides. There's a buffer between the buildings and the houses on Wilmuth. There seem to be a lot of positives. I'm not a big fan of the architecture because it reminds me of other low-income housing developments that I've seen in the past that were built in the 70s or 80s. But I like the fact that we have a variety of building types and that there is a little bit more of what seems to be, I don't know, an architectural style that maybe fits better with the residential look of the current neighborhood, although not being exactly what we see in the neighborhood. It also does not look extremely urbanized. And I think that the MVAH looks kind of like a standard apartment complex that we already have around Ames. So I like the Prairie Fire from a number of perspectives.
Bronwyn.
I tend to agree for a lot of the reasons Gloria stated, but I think also just the neighborhood likes it. I mean, I think that we got an email from Joanne, I think, that said that, you know, their neighborhood group like the Prairie Fire one, and I think we've worked to come to some understanding with that. You know, we've worked long and hard with that neighborhood anyway, and this plan does tend to, the Prairie Fire one, yeah, the design elements just seem to it blends well, or it seems like it would, into that neighborhood. So yeah, like Gloria said, the other one is fine, and I do, you know, there's something to be said for just sheer number of units per dollar, but also I think we need to go with something that will fit in that neighborhood. So that's me. That's my take.
Thank you. David.
I feel like it's a very close call between them. They're both good proposals. It feels like MVAH is somehow a little less risky, but I have no idea how to quantify that. I do really appreciate the attention that Prairie Fire has given to Tripp Street and the future development across Tripp Street. We have a council goal that has to do with developing a beautification master plan for the city. And so I think we should keep that in mind. It's not the only factor, but I think the design is just more attentive to the environment. So I like that. I'll just stop my comments there. I'm interested to hear from others.
Amber, what do you think?
I mean, my first instincts tend to lean toward MVAH simply because there are more units, and I think we've been long talking about the need for affordable housing. It routinely comes up in our reports that Vanessa collects and issues to us, and so, like I said, instinctually, I lean towards that. I could go either way, though. I'm more familiar with Prairie Fire just personally because I've been around some of their other developments. And I appreciate the neighborhood's input on their choice of Prairie Fire as well, and understand why they like that one as their top choice. But if I had to pick, I would probably select MVAH simply because I think we have a little bit more impact with regards to our affordable housing goal.
Rachel.
I'd say I'm definitely torn between the two as well. You know, the sheer number of units on MVAH is definitely important to meeting the affordable housing needs in our community, but also I do really like the site layout of Prairie Fire in particular, and how they've structured things with Wilmeth and Tripp Avenue. I think it fits maybe a little bit better with the aesthetics of the neighborhood and a little bit lower density. So I'm still kind of thinking about both, and definitely curious to hear public input as well.
Tim.
Yeah, good comments. There's a lot to like about both of these. To Amber's point, this is really an opportunity for us to address affordable housing that we just haven't had. I mean, this is perhaps once in a generation type of project. And Vanessa has made it clear, it's not a matter that we have a shortage of apartments, but we have a shortage of apartments for affordable housing units. And so we're going to be making decisions tonight about whether people are able to live in Ames, frankly. And I think we need to think long term. I think those needs are going to be with us. And so if it was a close call in terms of the numbers, I could really flip a coin. But the fact that we have the opportunity to map a much larger impact on a population that we need to speak for them tonight. They're not represented. They don't have people. Amos isn't here tonight, or maybe they are. Maybe they'll speak. But I think we need to be keeping those families in mind and people who would benefit from this. The second aspect of this deals with the tax revenues, and that's what I brought up in my questioning. This is an opportunity for us to also think about generating additional tax base for our community, and that's something that we have to think about. This property has not been on the tax rolls ever, and so this is going to be an exciting new injection of very needed revenues. And so the opportunity to add a project that's Kelly was cautious, and I think he needed to be in the estimate, but it's probably going to be a pretty substantial difference given the number of units. And I think that's also an important factor for us to consider as well. We need those tax revenues. So I would lean toward the MVAH tonight.
Mayor, could I ask another question of Kelly and Vanessa?
Absolutely.
As I was listening to Tim and Amber and Rachel talking about the number of affordable units, I wanted to be sure that I'm interpreting these plans correctly. The MVAH plan has virtually no green space for children to play or any of that. Is that correct? Am I reading that plan right? Whereas the Prairie Fire plan does incorporate a play space and more green space for families to be outdoors?
So the MVA project has a tot lot in it at the very southwest corner of the site, but other just kind of general open green space, you're right, it's not there because of the size of the parking lot and the total number of units versus Prairie Fire, which has a tot lot as well as green space. And we talked about in our interviews, you know, we're planning for a pocket park across the street, but to take, again, the LIHTC scoring system is everything in this. And so there's certain attributes that had to be focused into the site. We couldn't necessarily add units or do other things that might make more sense on a neighborhood level because they wanted to get the points, like have a tot lot on site rather than recognize across the street it could be done. But you're right, there's clearly more open space on Prairie Fire versus MVH.
So if that's the case, I would just also like to throw out that if we have families living in whatever we put up there, wouldn't it be nice if they had some way to be outdoors and not just seeing a parking lot?
Vanessa, and Kelly, a couple of things. One is, Vanessa, I know you've been at this for many, many years. Can you talk about the need, the demand for this type of housing in Ames? By my calculations, MVAH will have 45 LMI, 2 or 3 bedroom units or townhomes, whereas Prairie Fire will have either 31 or 32. So we have about 45% more in MVAH, or about 13, 14 more units. Is there demand? Will these be filled up quickly? Help council think through that. You're muted, Vanessa.
It is an expectation that these units would be absorbed up. We know we've had some units come open in the city the last couple of years, but those units have been mostly oriented towards students and built towards students. We haven't really had a concentration of helping low-income families find more units. As we hear from our housing authority that we partner with and are on their board, we have a lot of people that using their vouchers. They can't find anything in Ames. They have to go outside of Ames. So, and then we're having people move into Ames that's looking for more affordable housing so they can get on their feet. So, you know, it's a case that we see the numbers on paper. We anticipate that need is still out there. However, who knows what happens in the next couple of months with COVID and the economy. But that is what our data has been showing since we've been doing our consolidated plan. And as I hear from other nonprofit organizations, human service agencies, you know, their concern is families can't find anything here, and they lose their voucher, or they have to go outside the city of Ames to find a place that they can afford with a voucher.
And can you comment on Gloria's question relative to the importance of open green space?
Well, I certainly think it's important, and you know, it's kind of twofold in the entire neighborhood as our neighborhood revitalization area. You know, IFA requires that small playground space as part of their scoring, and with the park across the street, and then we have Franklin Park that we're investing a lot of money in right now, and going to have a bike trail from Franklin Park all the way over to the site. We have increased the amount of recreational opportunities for that entire neighborhood.
Okay. Kelly, you're welcome to comment on those questions. And also the other question I want to ask you is, what flexibility is there on the exterior design if, to Gloria's question about, it seems like it smacks a little bit of 1970s type of housing in terms of flat roof or the design. Is there, I think I read in the report that there was some flexibility, is that correct?
I'm going to talk to the open space question first, and I'll come back to that, Mr. Mayor. I think you're in a neighborhood here where open space is actually fairly abundant, at least off-site. As Vanessa just outlined, you have a number of public amenities around here. You also have you have open space just to the south of the site with College Creek, and then you have so the on-site makes a kind of a comfortable layout. I get that, but in terms of usable space in the area, there's a lot of opportunities in the neighborhood. So if this was another part of town, maybe we would have highlighted the need for open space as a priority in the site. I'm never going to say that we don't want high quality open space and make a comfortable living environment, but in this area, you have a lot of off-site opportunities. And in terms of working with the developer, I think it was very clear with MVAH as well as with Prairie Fire that they look at it as a partnership. They have a pro forma, they have a concept that they think works, that they can market in the city and also get a competitive score with IFA. But there are things that they're willing to talk with us about that we think would fit better in the community with either development. So what does that exactly mean in terms of completely changing the architectural style from one to another? I'm not sure. I'm sure they'll be willing to talk about that. But that's the message we had from both of these people, is they wanted to be viewed as a partner with the city and not as a project that they think is what needs to be the project that they want.
Nicole, do you have any input?
I would have to agree with kind of what Amber and Rachel had said. The MVAH is going to provide significantly more homes for people. And from what I've looked at, there's plenty. I mean, Ames has a lot of parks and stuff. So for me, I wouldn't say that green space is like a huge concern. I mean, if they want to go outdoors, there's a lot of parks in Ames. So they'll have a chance to go outdoors. And that MVAH really has significantly more spaces to put people in.
Thank you. All right.
Mayor?
Go ahead, David.
If I could just circle back on one point, this goes to a question that I asked earlier about the two proposals, noting that we see balconies pictured on the Prairie Fire, but not on the MVAH. And I guess, Kelly, you reached out and heard that this falls in the category of let's work in a partnership way, and maybe we can figure out how to do things like that, but no promises either way, right? So I guess I just want to say that it feels meaningful to me that the outdoor space inside a unit, the balconies, were proposed by Prairie Fire as well, and they might be possible in the other, but I think that that's the sort of thing that can also really change the living experience for someone, aside from whether you have a big yard to go to or a yard across the street. I think it's a valued thing in apartments all across town.
Okay. All right, we're gonna go ahead and open up public comment, and so Deb, we're gonna ask people if they would please endeavor to limit their comments to approximately 3 minutes, and each person would have an opportunity to address council once this evening. And so Deb, we'll take comments now.
All right, and just a reminder for people who wish to provide comments, you can use the raise hand button function on Zoom, or if you're calling in by phone, please use *9. And Mayor, we do have Julia Sager who wishes to provide comments.
Very good. And then each person needs to state their name and their address, and if they don't state the city, we'll assume it's in Ames, and then you can begin your comments.
Had to unmute myself.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for taking our comments, and members of the council. My name is Julia Sager, and I live at 429 Hilltop Road. And I have a few things. First, I want to thank the city staff for making time to explain the proposal scoring and things that went into those choices to the neighborhood association, of which I am a member. Thank you very much for that. And now I have, I would like to read the letter that someone's already referred to, and then I have a couple of comments and a question. I'll get that all in 3 minutes, I promise.
Okay.
So the letter reads, in part, the neighborhood group feels that the proposal that best fits the neighborhood is Prairie Fire. We agree that the concept best aligns with neighboring parties in aesthetics and desirable site layout. We believe it offers a better quality of life for all of the stakeholders by offering an enhanced lifestyle through lower density, more green space for the families who live there, and less of apartment style huge parking lot look. The way it is proposed to face Wilmouth, and I think that was a slip of the keyboard, I think they meant Tripp, makes it seem more integrated into the neighborhood as well. We appreciate the developers' interest in green issues, health and well-being, and strong focus on thorough management of the apartments. We recognize, and I guess it's already been addressed, that they need to get to the 155 score. We hope that the concept design process would allow for a little refinement of the exterior look to best fit the neighboring community, and will be true to the rendering by having adequate and mixed landscaping, plain green space areas, and if they could squeeze in a community garden area, that'd be lovely. I'm paraphrasing. And this letter was sent to council, signed by Ellen Herman and Joanne Pfeiffer, who's the chair. So Joanne is having computer problems. That's why she's not here. So, but I did talk to her immediately before this this meeting, and she has phone banked just about every person that has been interested in this site and actively engaged with Councilmember Martin and everybody else that's worked on this. And all of she managed to make 20 phone calls in a day, and all 20 preferred Prairie Fire. So I'd like to briefly address a couple of things that have been brought up. First off, I think there was a question about, gee, this 70s architecture look. I actually had to be told to zoom in on that rendering very closely to identify that it was brick below and siding above. And once I kind of did that, because when I just looked at the artist rendering from my computer screen distance, it actually looked like a prison to me. But when I zoomed in on that, I realized, oh, actually, that's probably okay. And, probably minor adjustments in colors and whatever would make it satisfactory. Now, the other thing I wanted to address is I appreciate the goal of council to provide the maximum amount of affordable housing for families. We appreciate that. However, I have to say that as a parent of 6 children and numerous grandchildren, I think that you might be missing something about this matter of MVAH style development, providing a quality living environment specifically for the families of children under the age of 10. Under the age of 10, you cannot let your kids go across the street to play at the pocket park. You just can't. You certainly can't let them ride down to Franklin Park. You are likely to get a hostile visit from CPS were you to do that. You can, however, let them go play in the backyard with their buddies from the apartments nearby. And I have to say that feeling of community that you get by the kids being able to play with their friends near their house is really priceless. And it's what I wanted for my children. And I think it's what most parents are going to want for their children, a safe place. Doesn't have to be fancy, the little tot lot's nice and all that, but really, a stick of rock in College Creek is probably fine. The other thing is the very large parking lot, I believe, is an inherent safety hazard to, again, families with young kids. You can't just let the kid go next door or, to their friend's house across the parking lot if the child is 8. In my safe suburban neighborhood, my 8-year-old kid went up the street to visit his friends all the time. So I just want to bring those concerns forward to the council. We do think that the scope of the number of units is in the Prairie Fire proposal is more commensurate to the scale of the neighborhood.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you for hearing me.
Anybody else, Deb?
Mayor, I don't see anyone else wishing to speak at this time.
Okay.
Whoop, just there. Yeah,
There are
we got
two.
some hands.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
We do have a couple more people.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, Tony and Debbie, if you'd like to unmute yourselves and proceed with your comments.
Okay, this is Tony representing also Debbie Ramey. Our address is 425 Hilltop Road in the neighborhood. We're over at our son's house babysitting our grandson. So Debbie's doing that. So I'll speak for both of us and try to do it in 3 minutes or less. To summarize, I think we're in favor of the Prairie Fire proposal. What I see, and I think it's valid, what people have been saying, you're basically looking at quantity in the hand of MVAH, and you're looking at quality. You got to decide which of those two you're going to emphasize in the decision you make. And not surprisingly, the neighborhood has been pushing in the direction of quality with the extra green space and so forth. And I think Julia did a fantastic job, as well as a letter that was written by the group that met Saturday night, which we were not a part of. So I wanted to just throw in my vote for that one as well. I really appreciated that letter and how they summarize things. So yeah, I think it would be better to have the higher quality of the 36 units than the lower quality of the 50 units. But you guys are the ones that have the authority to make the decision. So you're going to have to just decide which of those two has the higher priority. So thank you very much.
Tony, before you go, just a quick question. When you say the higher quality, are you referring to quality of life in terms of outdoor activities, or are you referring to the quality of construction or exterior appearance?
The former, mainly. I mean, yeah, we do have our concerns about like the flat roof on the apartment building of Prairie Fire. We'd rather see a hip roof on that. And in that regard, we would give more points to MVAH for the appearance and also for a better blend into the surrounding neighborhood and so forth. But I think the other concerns about the former definition of quality, quality of the experience of the people living there. I think the people living there, even though there'll be fewer of them, but that's part of the reason that it'll be higher qualities, because there'll be fewer of them. I think that the 50 unit proposal, as people have suggested with the lack of green space, the size of the parking lot, I think that proposal is overloading that piece of land. And I think the Prairie Fire is a better fit to the amount of land that you have to work with.
Thank you. I want to make sure we're clear on that. And I think that's what I assumed was the case, but didn't want to make any assumptions. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me clarify.
Absolutely, Tony. Thank you for calling in. Who else, Deb, do we have that would like to address council?
Yes, we have someone by the name of Pixel 3A. If you'd like to unmute yourself and proceed with your comments.
Sorry, that's my phone identification. This is Sharon Stewart at 437 Hilltop Road. So I've been a part of this discussion since we moved into this house 7 years ago, and I wasn't able to make the meeting on Saturday to hear some more details. So I thought I would just hop in and give our family's perspective. It seems really, really, really important that we consider the people that are going to be joining our community and our neighborhood. And I understand the need for more housing, but I also know that there's so many instances where low income housing has been turned into a place that you want to get out of as soon as you can. There's a long history of low income housing not really considering people. And the biggest difference that I saw between the two plans was the consideration of the people that would be living there. It felt like Prairie Fire really considered that a lot more. I think that when you have the housing where the parking is behind the house, you end up having people coming and going in and out of, going into the outdoors and connecting with the sidewalks and the streets and the people that are around. There's so much more opportunity to meet your neighbor and to have more shared space. Additionally, I noticed the balconies. That was a big thing for me. I think it's really important that these housing situations are something that provide people a platform to be able to have a good, healthy, full quality of life. And if you feel like you're locked in a box, that's not going to be the case. One of my very close family members, a sibling of mine, was living in low income housing for approximately 2 years. And this individual had a extremely hard time. The housing conditions were less than favorable. She felt like she was just stacked in a box on a pile of boxes. And there was just no attention given to her particular living circumstances. And I don't want to see other people go through that same situation. And that is definitely my concern with the other project. So I am personally very much in favor of the Prairie Fire. I think it's a space that seems to really consider the tenants of the property and not just trying to mark checks on the score box. And I think that as we continue to grow as a city, we always need to be considering affordable housing and how to improve opportunities and make sure that affordable housing is spread throughout the city. It shouldn't just be in a couple of neighborhoods. It should be something where, every square mile of Ames has a certain percentage of affordable housing. I want to see affordable housing in Somerset. I want to see affordable housing in, just north of Lincoln Way in the neighborhood close to us. I want to see affordable housing just spread throughout Ames. I think it's a really important factor, but I think as we move forward, we have to consider what that housing looks like for the individuals so that we're offering a quality of life outside of just affordable life. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else, Deb?
No, Mayor, I don't see anyone else wishing to speak.
Okay, we will go ahead and close public comment and council for the discussion and a motion.
One more thought I had, just again to kind of address this sort of maximum units versus fit of the project. I think what Sharon said really resounded in that we should be thinking that we're going to have more chances than just this. And if this were the only chance we had, I mean, I know it's a nice large parcel of land. It's the first one of those we've had in a while. But the better we do with this, and the better it fits in the neighborhood, the more likely we're going to be able to do future projects in other parts of town too. I think, if the neighborhood is receptive to this and it fits well and integrates well into the neighborhood, I think it would be easier to see them repeated in other places too, similar developments. So that's a thought as well. Like the better we do with this, hopefully we can see repeated chances to do things like this.
But just in fairness, Brown, there's a reason why we don't have these projects in other parts of town is that we don't have control over the development. So this is our opportunity to do something. We may never have an opportunity like this for a long time. So I don't want to create a false expectation that these kind of projects are going to be around the corner. In my 6 years, this is the first time we've had a chance to do something like this. And so I'm really excited. I hope we make the most of this opportunity.
Tim, I guess I sort of agree with you, but I think there's a question of what making the most of the opportunity means and doing it right. You know, what does that mean? I've studied public housing from the past and the many, many mistakes that were made with those kinds of housing projects. And I know I wouldn't want to see us getting anywhere near that kind of situation here in Ames. And so I think quality of life is incredibly important, regardless of your economic status. And I just think of those families with the little kids and want them to be able to go outdoors near where they, right near, like in the backyard of where they live. So that to me says we were doing it right because we were thinking of the quality of life here, and we didn't lose hope that we could do something else somewhere else in the future if this does go well.
But just in fairness, we're not looking at a Cabrini Green.
I didn't say that.
Well, but a lot of the comments have made it sound like quantity versus quality. We have similar densities in terms of the land all over Ames. So this is not a density that's an unusual number. And so this is a 3-story building. I think we have to be careful not to denigrate the design of the MVAH. I think there's a lot of good design qualities. But as staff has pointed out, there's ample green space and parks around. We just don't have the opportunity to have a perfect project, so we have to balance. And I'm not disputing, you know, and ideally there would be all kinds of different attributes that would build the quality of life. But you've heard Vanessa talk about, we have a need for affordable housing, and there are families that won't get to live in Ames. They would love to live in Ames. They would love to have their kids in our schools, and we would love to have them. They work here. Remember, a third of the people who live in Ames or work in Ames don't live here. And so this is an opportunity for us to provide workforce housing in this community. And we're going to forfeit this tonight, perhaps over characteristics, I think, that aren't fair. I think we need to maximize the number of families that we're able to help.
Other closing comments before I entertain a motion?
Just maybe one final bite of the apple here. We set council goals for a reason, and they express sort of the broad sentiments of things we want to achieve. There are lots of different housing areas in the community that range in terms of levels of amenity. But I honestly believe that this project, which we've been working on for 6 years, this is the final piece that of the puzzle that we're going to put in place. If we really believe in these council goals, I think this is a unique opportunity. We may not see this for many, many years. So I hope we take advantage of that tonight.
All right, I entertain a motion.
I would move that we pursue the Prairie Fire plan.
Second.
All right, moved by Betcher, second by Martin to pursue Prairie Fire. Further discussion?
Just one more pitch. There are very important people who aren't here. They're not on that list of the neighborhood people because they don't live here yet. And I think we need to speak for them and think of them. I hope we go with the MVAH tonight.
I would just counter that, Tim, with I think that we are trying to speak for them and speak about the importance of quality of life.
And I would just add that we all agree on the council goals. The devil's in the details, and this is where we sort out the ways that those goals aren't 100% compatible all the time, and we have to make some trade-offs. I don't think agreeing wholeheartedly to the goals means that this circumstance compels us to choose option A versus option B.
Okay.
Uh,
Go ahead, Roman.
I was going to say, I tend to agree. I mean, I think the fact that we're considering affordable rental on this parcel is that is our attempt to address this need, and it's about compromise too, I think. So
I'll also just like to add that one of the new things that we're benefiting from here is that we have a new income stream of federal money in the home program. So this is a way that we can use some of that money to benefit the community. But there will be there's other income from that program as well. Now, who knows what opportunities we will have to be able to translate that into housing. But it does change the situation for us going forward.
And Vanessa, if I could, when was the last time we had an opportunity to do a project like this? I mean, just for some historical context.
You mean as far as the city doing multifamily?
Yes.
Let me make sure I answer that question right. We have not done a development of multifamily as a city. When we administered the Section 8 program, that was our biggest program that we administered to help low-income families gain access to housing in Ames. But other than that, I'm not aware, other than doing our first-time homebuyer program, things like that, that's the biggest impact we've had in affordable housing.
And you've been with the city for how long?
Just over 38 years.
So, I mean, this is my point, folks. This is an opportunity. We have to think long-term. And the need for affordable housing, do you think it's going to go down as our community grows? So let's make a place in our community for people of all income levels. This is an incredibly important opportunity. I hope we don't forfeit it tonight.
Okay, roll call, please.
Garden,
Nay.
Junk,
Aye.
Corey Airy,
nay.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Is there any direction to staff regarding when they're negotiating with this contracts in terms of making them aware of? Is there anything you want to talk about, Vanessa or Kelly, in terms of exterior design, or just get the agreement worked out? If there were any comments, that will follow afterwards. Is that correct?
Yes, I think what we'll be doing next is making sure that the design meets the requirements of our development. If there's anything that can be enhanced, that would make the whole project very nice for the neighborhood, we certainly will be negotiating those things and working on making sure that we can have an agreement in time to get additional public input before we submit an application to IFA, and also that we meet that time frame to get the application submitted by March of 2021. Kelly?
Just what Vanessa said, I think we'll talk to them, kind of explain how the conversation went, and see what the options are and when and during the time frame of this changes may occur.
Okay. All I heard was just some questions on the aesthetics, and both from the community, the public input, as well as from some of the council members. I think nice to have some opportunity to get some input to them once the agreement is entered into. All right, very good. We're gonna move on to item 18, Domini subdivision, first edition. Is there any questions for staff or anything that staff wants to bring to the attention of council this evening on this item?
Just pointing out, there's two actions tonight. It's not just your normal final plat approval. You are approving a development agreement. These are both conditions of the PRD and the preliminary plat. So we think we've addressed the interests of phasing as well as protecting the city during the construction activities that will occur on city property.
And Kelly, has the agreement been signed?
Yes, we have everything back from the applicant, letter of credit and the original signed agreement. Yes.
Any questions for staff? If not, entertain a motion approving resolution for the development agreement for Domini subdivision first edition.
So moved.
Second. Corriere, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call.
Sorry, Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain a motion or a motion approving resolution for the final plat.
So moved.
Second.
Betcher and Junk, thank you. Roll call.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Thank you. Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 19, resolution approving airport master plan. Damien?
Well, you can see in the item tonight that this was also presented in its full form back here on September 22nd. The plan has been out for a 30-day comment period. Probably not surprising, but we didn't get any public comments. Maybe it's a perfect airport master plan and there was no changes necessary. So tonight it's really just if there's any questions I can answer or that the council would have a resolution approving the plan. And once the plan is approved, I will take it with our consultant to the FAA to get their pieces of the plan signed, which is that aviation forecast and the airport layout plan. So if there aren't any questions, I'll try my best to answer what questions there are.
Any questions for Damien? I will just pause for a second first and open up public comment on this item before we take any action. Deb, is there anyone participating that would desire to offer public comment on this airport master plan this evening?
No, Mayor, I do not see anyone wishing to comment.
Okay, we'll close public comment. I entertain a motion approving the resolution, a resolution approving airport master plan.
So moved.
Garten?
Second.
Betcher, thank you. Roll call.
Corriere,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you, John. Moving on to item 20, under hearings, proposed text amendment regarding new floodplain maps, updated definitions, and amended terminology used in Chapter 9 of the Ames Municipal Code. Justin, does that fall under your responsibility?
We have Justin Moore here. He's our designated floodplain manager. He is in charge of this project.
All right. Justin, do you have any comments you want to make or discuss the process we went through?
I'll just review briefly process that we started that was initiated by FEMA and the DNR at the end of 2018. Last year, we sent out notices to property owners who own property within the floodplain. And we also held a public meeting early in 2019. Staff and the community had an opportunity to review the proposed map change and provide any comments. I will note we did, as staff, appeal some of the floodplain expansion around Ada Hayden Lake. FEMA reviewed our appeal and granted our appeal to have that reduced. We felt that based on the engineering that was done to the lake and the flood history there, that the area where they were showing the floodplain around the immediately adjacent to the lake was not realistic. And they did, in fact, grant that appeal and reduce the amount of floodplain around the lake, primarily back to just the surface of the water and some wetland area just to the west of the lake. We are also separately doing a letter of map amendment request to FEMA for the Tea Garden study area. If granted, that would remove a sizable chunk of floodway and floodplain in the Crystal and Jewel Street area down on the south side of Ames. So that will not be part of this map update. That will be a separate map amendment that FEMA will grant likely after this proposed new firm has been put into place. So other than that, I can answer any questions council might have at this time.
Justin, I just have a kind of, I don't know, a quality of perception question. So with regard to Tea Garden, where we get a lot of complaints from the neighbors about water backup and all of that, is it more beneficial for the property owners to have themselves included in that FEMA floodplain or floodway fringe, whatever's been indicated, map, or to not be in it?
Well, the process that we're going through with the letter of map amendment will address the portion of, I guess, what you would call the former creek that used to be there in the pre-development days. That creek is still mapped, and much of the north half of the Tea Garden area we have already piped through our own storm sewer system. And so this letter of map amendment would address that area. The areas that are still open ravine would remain within floodplain. So I believe that it would still adequately address those who should be or should have property within the floodplain and those who shouldn't. Because we have a lot of area right now, homes and businesses, where there's floodway and floodway fringe shown, where there's literally been no flooding by our records for the last several decades, even in some of the largest floods we've ever experienced. So what we want to do with this is eliminate the unnecessary indication of floodplain where it's unnecessary and maintain it where it's still required or needed. And with our consultant engineer and through Tracy in engineering, as well as I've worked with her, we think that we've got that pretty well nailed down. We've submitted that information to FEMA. We're just waiting for FEMA to make their final decision. They've been communicating with our consultant engineer, asking some questions. So hopefully as soon as possible, it'll be resolved. But yes, I believe that the areas that still need to be in the floodplain will still be there. And the areas that don't need to, that don't make any sense, will hopefully be completely removed.
Thank you.
Other questions for Justin? Justin and Kelly, I just have one question. That is, has these minor changes, these maps, had any effect in terms of the Ames 2040 plan, in terms of how you're planning and thinking through growth, in particular there in the southeast part of Ames?
I would say no. The extent of the change is pretty minimal. So we already had the general floodplains on the edge of the city as a known commodity, as well as the floodplains for Squaw and Skunk and College and Whirly Creek. So really no. All it did was refine some of the details. Didn't really change the broad brush issues that you'd see in the comp plan.
And will adopting this have any adverse effect on property values or anybody? And if so, have they been notified ahead of time of the fact that this is going to be adopted?
I'm not going to judge whether it's an adverse value, but obviously lending institutions want to know if you're in the floodplain, And typically you're obligated, if you have a mortgage on a property, to carry floodplain insurance. So if you were not in the floodplain previously, you may be subject to floodplain insurance requirements. I think Justin identified that 70 properties were being changed, and
correct.
There's less than that are individual property owners. So they will be probably subject to some change in their flood insurance options or flood insurance rates.
And they were notified, is that correct, ahead of time?
Yes. So we most recently, 2 weeks ago, sent a reminder notice to them that this process had been ongoing for quite some time and it was now coming to a conclusion.
And did you get any public comment or input from those that you notified?
Justin, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I did. I did receive some replies that contacted me directly. And so I talked that through with them. Received, I believe, one or two that had originally not owned the property when we sent our letters out last year and started the process, but had purchased the property since. So I talked that through with them. And then I think I received about 4 or 5 phone calls in total from this second round of letters.
And what kind of feedback were you getting?
Primarily, the questions are, what impact will this have as far as my flood insurance? And we advise them to contact their insurance company or their lender to see what the impact would potentially be. In some cases, the floodplain is just growing onto a small portion of the bare ground at the back of their property or on the side of their property. There are some other cases where the building is coming into the floodplain, and those could have effects on the level of flood insurance required or the rates. So we advise them to contact their provider, and then if requested, I also provide them with some insurance information that FEMA offers. They have a pretty good website out there that answers some questions.
It's my understanding in your review of it, you took no issue with it, so the adopting of this, because the federal government's the one that puts these maps out, correct?
Yeah,
that's correct. So go ahead.
No, you go first. I'll add on.
Yeah, so FEMA ultimately FEMA generated this map. And so when they delivered this to us, this was otherwise their intention to designate these new boundaries. And anyone who chose to appeal that or file a map amendment request has the avenues or had the avenues to do so. But otherwise, yes, the boundaries, if FEMA doesn't agree with the appeal or if no one otherwise applies the
What I want to add is I don't know that it's fair to characterize this necessarily as a regulation. The total program is an opportunity. So to be able to take advantage of that federal subsidized flood insurance, you have to apply regulations to the property. So if the city does not do this, we will fall out of compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program. And then those people that benefit from subsidized insurance rates that are still in the floodplain will not be able to take advantage of the program. So to be in the program, yes, there are requirements, and as a city, we've chosen that the benefits outweigh the costs across the city, anyways. And one other comment: we've been talking about the insurance rates that may change, but Justin did note that a couple of buildings, they're now going to be in the floodplain. So one of the other aspects of the ordinance is that non-conforming buildings, at a certain time when improvements are made to them, they do need to be brought into conformity for flood protection as well. So we mostly focus on the regulations that require fill or flood protection for new buildings, but the ordinance also addresses non-conforming buildings that are in danger of being flooded and making improvements to them over time as well.
So could you quantify how many residential properties are now subject to flood insurance that weren't for the revision of the map? I couldn't tell that from the material.
I actually don't have a count on the number of residential properties. I know of the new buildings that were coming in. I believe virtually most all of them were non-residential. save for maybe one or two. In terms of total properties that were coming in some form, there were a few more residential properties, but overall, the vast majority of the buildings are non-residential.
Just to tie this up, the federal government is gradually stepping away from the subsidy for flood insurance. So this is going to become extremely expensive for homeowners who have to maintain this. And as a result of that, that's going to have a dramatic impact on people's property values who are in that. So just because there's insurance available, I don't want people to think that that's an easy fix. It's a very expensive fix, and it's going to depress the property value accordingly. So, but these adjustments are going to happen periodically, and there's really nothing we can do.
And then, just for council perspective, my goal was not to grill the presenters as much as it was to tease out for the public. And if people do call up and have questions or, hey, my property values went down, this is a process that we're going through, and it's something that really we can appeal some of it, as Justin did with around Ada Hayden. But it will have, Tim, to your point, it will have some impact on people, and in particular what Kelly just mentioned, some commercial properties. I don't know if we've informed them that in the future, when they go ahead and want to make improvements, they're going to have to bring into compliance. But that could also be a surprise when they come to the DRC, want to add on to their building and find out that they have a lot more work to do. That's all. So, but we live in a community that is prone to flooding, so it's just part and parcel of living in Ames is part of it. So, all right, thank you, Kelly and Justin. I'm going to declare the public hearing on the proposed text amendments regarding the new floodplain maps, updated definitions, and amended terminology used in Chapter 9 of the Ames Municipal Code to be open. And Deb, is there anybody who would like to address council under public comment on this item?
No, Mayor, there is not.
All right, declare the public hearing to be closed, and council, I would entertain a motion on first passage of ordinance.
Move on first passage.
Martin?
Second.
And Martin. Amy, you're probably aware, but Amber needed to take a 30-minute break for another event, so she will not be available to be voting. She left the meeting at 7:28, said she should be back shortly after 8, so. All right, roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I did not notice that. So it'll be Martin.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 21, zoning text amendments regarding extension of building features into required setbacks. Kelly?
We're just asking to continue this for one more month just to get the final ordinance written with City Attorney's Office.
Okay. I entertain a motion to continue the hearing to November 24th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, thank you. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, moving on to item 22, hearing on environmental information document for North River Valley Wellfield and Pipeline Project. Hey, Neil.
I'd like to touch on this project and then also touch on the environmental information document. If you remember, a year back or so, we actually bid this new wellfield and pipeline project out, and the bids that we received were nearly 30% over our project budget. So since then, we've moved the funding source to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, or commonly known as the FRS funding source. So this environmental information document is part of the SRF project or process, and it's just one component of the environmental review component of the SRF process. So the overall conclusion of this environmental impact document is that the project will have no significant environmental impact. And there's a number of things that the Iowa DNR did to come to that conclusion. If you see on page 2 of the document, they actually reached out to nearly 40 different state, local agencies. Majority of those are Native American
Indian tribes that they reached out to. And you can see a note there on page 3 where they received no adverse comments to date from any of those agencies. So going on to the environmental impacts summary on page 4, there's a couple key notes I'd like to point out there on the historical and archaeological section. There's a note there that the phase 1 archaeological investigation is still currently underway, and those results will be submitted to the State Historical Preservation for review, and this project will only proceed if that determination is either no historic properties affected or no adverse effect on historical properties. And then the second one under the environmental section is that as far as some of the species that are endangered, that this project will not impact any of these threatened or endangered species if trees are removed from that October date to the March 31st date to avoid the Indiana brown bat, which is common in this part of Iowa. So you can see a conclusion on the last page that there are nearly 10 different bullet points for a summary of the reasons for concluding no significant impact. But I've highlighted the ones that I thought were most important. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone would have on this project.
Any questions for Neil?
Thanks for your work on this. This is quite a process.
It is.
One of the things that's nice about these city council meetings, people get a chance to realize all the work that goes into something like this. This is amazing. So thanks for your work on this.
Mm-hmm.
John, anything you want to add to Neil's presentation?
No, I think you hit the important things.
All right. Hearing no further questions, I'm declare the hearing on the environmental information document for the North River Valley Wellfield and Pipeline Project to be open. Deb, is there anybody in the audience that wants to address council on this particular item?
No, Mayor, there is not.
Hearing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. And with no further questions, I entertain a motion on a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign the Iowa DNR environmental information document on behalf of the city of Ames.
Thank you.
So moved.
Garten and Betcher, thank you. Roll call, please.
Judy Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Moving on to item 23, hearing on Unit 8 boiler repair. And tonight, council, it's just they're looking for a motion to accept the report of bids and delaying the award. And I will declare the public hearing on Unit 8 boiler repair to be open. Deb, is there anyone who wants to address council on this project?
No, there is not.
Declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion accepting the report of bids and delaying the award of contract.
So moved.
Junk
Second.
and Betcher, thank you. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried, thank you. Moving on to item 24, hearing on the Baker subdivision geothermal heat pump system. Again, motion for accepting the report of bids and delaying the award. Declare the public hearing on Baker subdivision geothermal heat pump system to be open. Deb, is there anyone who wants to address council on this item?
No, there is not.
Okay. Declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion accepting the report of bids and delaying the award.
So moved.
Second.
And Rachel, thank you. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. And moving on to item 25, hearing on amended major site development plan, which is part of the integrated site plan for 3619 Stang Road. And for those that maybe wonder where that's at, that is the property just immediately to the east of the North Fairway. Is that correct, Kelly?
Yep.
So really quick, very minor amendment. You just approved the development of the coffee shop here just 2 months ago, and they made some small changes in their layout and decided to ask for an increase in square footage. We're recommending approval. It doesn't really change the overall layout, and it should be really a minor adjustment to what was approved.
Any questions for staff? All right, declare the public hearing on the amended major site development plan, which is part of the integrated site plan for 3619 Stang Road, to be open. Deb, is there anyone that wishes to address council on this item?
No, Mayor, there is not.
Declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving amended major site development plan with stipulations.
Move approval?
Fetcher,
Second.
Junk, thank you. Roll call.
Fetcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 26, first passage of ordinance repealing the following urban revitalization areas effective 12/31/20 for each of the following properties. Kelly?
Yeah, so this is the implementation of direction we got, I think, back in August to help clean up some of our urban revitalization areas. So for the most part, we are ending areas that we had already intended to end, either through repeal or adding sunset clauses to those different ordinances. So we have them listed out for you tonight. It's going to be one ordinance that does a combination of changes. If there's any questions on the specific areas, I'll be happy to answer them.
Kelly, could you say something about the Crawford situation with the two outstanding properties that haven't applied? Are those units not currently occupied, or what's the situation that leads us to believe that post dating to January 2nd would address the issue?
The plan originally meant for it to end this year, so to functionally allow that to happen, that's why we're saying keep it as January 2nd, just to give these last two people a chance to file the paperwork. If they had filed at any time in the past 2 years, they would have been approved. It's not a question of meeting criteria, it's just filing the paperwork. I don't actually know the status of each unit on why they haven't filed the paperwork.
Thanks.
Further questions for staff? All right, I will go ahead and open up public comment on this particular item of the agenda. Deb, is there anyone who wants to address council on the first passage of this ordinance?
No, I don't see anyone wishing to comment.
Thank you. We'll close public comment. One quick question, Kelly, on what Glory just talked about. I didn't see that on our agenda for going to 1/2/21. Is that going to follow up later on?
Can you repeat that, Mr. Mayor?
Sure. On the council action form on our alternative number 1, it says establishing repeal effective date of 1/02/2021 for 415 Stanton. But I do not see that on the agenda. I just didn't know if you're gonna.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. We bulleted out 7 different urban revive areas in the staff report. The draft ordinance also has 7 listed. So there was no notice required for this. So I'm not sure if it's a flaw in noticing or not for the agenda.
I'll defer to Mark. Mark, can you advise us on this one? It was in the council action form, as Kelly alluded to. It is in the proposed ordinance in the council action form, but it just happens to not be listed on the agenda as a specific item.
Yeah, it's and you're right. I was looking as you were talking about it. I don't view it as a notice problem because even though it's not specified on the agenda, it's in the council action form. It's in the ordinance. So, it's, I think ample notice. It's, as Kelly said, there were 7 different ones that were being listed, and just an oversight to not have that on the actual agenda. But I think there's plenty of notice there to make it valid.
Okay.
And we can add, and we will add for the second reading, we can add add it back in, right?
Right.
When,
Would there be an opportunity at the second reading for anybody who wanted to speak on that aspect of the resolution?
Well, usually we don't do that, but it's always the mayor's discretion if he wants to allow that.
Well, given the fact that this is already a known, this is actually included in the council action form and actually is shown in the draft ordinance. It just happened to be not on the agenda. I guess the question is, you're both, Mark and Kelly, you believe that there's an adequate notice given to the public, so we're not going to basically be trying to conceal anything. Is that your opinion?
Yes.
I defer to Mark.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I think just to point out is, in this case, the deadline was already in the plan, so the property owner shouldn't expect in any longer period of time to apply than what is already there. And the ordinance is really just memorializing what was expected to be the end date already.
And Mark, for the record, if a motion is made for alternative number 1, short of having to read through all those, would that be adequate for the record?
Yes, that's fine, because it's on the council action form. So,
okay. All right, I entertain a motion on the first passage of the ordinance repealing the following urban revitalization areas effective 12/30. Just the following, the urban revitalization areas.
I move approval of alternative 1 as stated in the council action form.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Second.
Brown, thank you. Roll call, please.
Barton.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Thank you, Mark and Kelly. Appreciate that. All right, moving on to disposition of communications to council. There are 6 items. First is an email from Lawrence Cunningham regarding traffic concerns in South Campus neighborhood.
Mayor, I would move that we get a memo from Damien regarding what the situation is there and also reviewing the possibilities for future action.
Second.
Moved by Betcher, seconded by Brown. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. All right, we have a very interesting and exciting letter and artwork from Camden Bovey regarding a mini playground at Bell Air Circle. Thank you, David.
And move to refer this to staff.
Second.
All right.
It'd be nice if we could put this up so people could see this. This is probably the nicest correspondence we've received in years. So
I think we could write this individual and explain this is an ideal case for our neighborhood improvement grant program. That's what we usually have the neighbors get together and we do things like that in circles.
Steve, do you think you could correspond with a similar picture?
I'm not as good as art. I defer to Kelly on that for artwork.
But it has to be handwritten.
Yeah, it needs to be with crayon if that would be okay. I think that'd be appropriate.
And I think that I'll also send him a note thanking him for writing. I think it was very impressive that he took the time to and understands the channels that you follow to bring these items.
So is that good? Is that good? The mayor will write a letter?
Yep.
So what you're suggesting, Mayor, you write a letter?
Well, I think that I'll send him a handwritten note thanking him for writing to us. If you want to go ahead and respond to him, explaining what the opportunities would be, and then you get two correspondences and explain the process.
Okay, I'll do it.
Now, David, you had your motion though was just to request a memo. Do you want to retract that and change that?
I thought I said refer to staff.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, but you don't want to come back with anything to you. You want me to just follow up and correspond with the individual?
Correct. Yeah, if you need something from us, then please just let us know.
Okay. Okay. And Gloria, will you second it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Next is a letter from Byron and Beverly Schulke regarding parking lot on east side of lot 19, Somerset 13 edition.
We could get you a memo on the situation. It's a little unusual. Or maybe it was clear to you already.
I move we ask the staff to prepare a memo.
Second.
All right, Garten and Martin, thank you. Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Child Care Task Force final report recommendations. A memo from Dr. Winterstein.
Deb, any action needed here?
I think it's just something to keep in mind, the recommendations as we move into the fiscal year 22 asset process. I'll be bringing the request to council probably in December. We'll be getting those budget books here in a couple of weeks, and I'll assemble all that information for you so you can discuss what kind of allocation we'll provide to the volunteers for the January meetings. I will note one of the recommendations in the report is to transition the comfort zone, which is a daycare service for mildly ill children. It's provided at University Community Childcare, and that's been in place for many years. It's not heavily utilized, and it's required to have a nurse available if there is a child or children in that room who are ill. So it has a additional expense to it when provided. And in the recommendations, it is stated to transition that from that level of care to either an infant or toddler room to help address the waiting list that UCC has. And that is already underway. And UCC has reached out to the asset funders, asking what the process is to reallocate dollars to comfort zone to another level of childcare. So we've explained what our processes are. So you may be seeing here sometime yet this fiscal year a request to reallocate. It's about $1,100 from comfort zone to another level of childcare. So that may be coming forward, but otherwise, I think we stay tuned to see what kind of a stakeholders group is pulled together to address childcare for the longer term. I do think one of the big issues prior to the pandemic was capacity. Most of the daycare agencies had waiting lists, and but not funds to really expand, find additional space, hire additional staff, those kinds of things. And I think we'll eventually return to that issue, and that's part of what this stakeholders group will need to be looking at so we can plan for the future.
Yeah, but I had a follow-up question. So I think this is really significant that this was prepared prior to COVID. I really don't have a sense of what the childcare implications are as a result of the pandemic. Do you have a sense from your interaction with providers of how that need is fluctuated?
I think fluctuating is a good descriptor. With the pandemic, there have been openings created within the daycare agencies, and that could be due to the changes in school schedules, the changes in the family household work schedules, and maybe just a preference to keep kids at home and provide the in-home care. So there was a little bit of shuffling that's going on. I think what we're seeing is with school going back into in-person session and families looking ahead and trying to make decisions on what their work life is going to be. We're starting to see some of those slots fill up again. But the other thing I would toss into this, and even though it's not necessarily daycare, it does serve youth, and that would be the programs that are offered through Boys and Girls Club and Campfire. Both of those entities have stepped up and provided some sort of a supervision or day club option for children to attend when they're needing some virtual learning experience due to the changes in school schedules. And so I think those agencies should be recognized and applauded for filling a niche. But those slots aren't filled in those particular programs. And again, I think it's because we've got families who have selected the virtual, 100% virtual learning, and so they're keeping them at home. It's all kind of tossed up at this point in time, but we are hoping to get more of a handle on what these agencies are looking at doing with their services as we continue through the pandemic and what they're planning for in the coming months.
That's very helpful. Thank you for that.
Any other questions for Deb on this one? All right, so just take it under advisement, correct, Deb, and you'll help us remember this when it comes to asset time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Fifth is email from Jean and Dean Prestaman and Damian Pressiger. I'm going to presume that the issue is closed. Is that correct?
Pardon me?
I presume that item is closed. Is that correct?
I'd like to follow up on it, actually. I would ask for Steve's guidance on how to do that.
Let's refer it to Damien. He's already responded, but he'll respond to the council on the situation. So refer it to Public Works Traffic Engineer.
Okay, for a memo?
Yeah. Move to refer to the traffic engineer.
Okay.
Second.
All right, Martin and Tesher. Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carried. And item 6, memo from Dwayne on the Vertex Software LLC and access information.
Yeah, no action. You just know that the action was rescinded by the state, so we have no further obligation. I'm going to go on record on that.
Okay. All right. Moving on to council comments. Start with you tonight, David.
Good evening. Steve, you sent councils some communications from Ideal Energy. They're working on the solar farm having to do with the connection fees. Do you need council to do anything here, or can you?
I think we're working on it now. What it'll take is our existing fee structure and electric fees does not contemplate solar farms. So we need to work on something, and I think our staff is doing that. That may require you to take some swift action on our recommendation to change our add to this fee. And the reason we need quick action because we don't want to, they need permits to keep going. So it was never contemplated. We're gonna have to come, we're looking at what other cities are doing. And yes, it's a new concept that was never contemplated in the fee structure. So we're working on it. We'll bring it back to you. We might even have to have a special meeting for that to get it going, keep them going. They're doing a pretty good job staying on track.
Okay, but nothing from us tonight then? That sounds good to me. Okay.
Anything else, David?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Tim?
Yes, I sent the council a note indicating my interest in hearing about how things are going with the finances of SIRIDE. And so I would move that we invite the director of SIRIDE to meet with council to discuss the fiscal status of SIRIDE prior to the end of the year.
Is there a second?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else, Tim?
That's it. Thanks.
Nicole?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Bradley?
Nothing for me, thanks.
All right. How are you, Rachel?
I hope everyone takes our next Tuesday off to go vote. Polls are open 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. I'll be a poll worker at one of the poll locations, so hoping that everyone goes out and exercises their civic duty. But other than that, that's it.
Thank you. Gloria?
Just following up on Rachel's comment, please mask up when you go to the polls. Keep our poll workers healthy. And I want to remind council that we've got the symposium on building inclusive organizations coming up in November. And I think that's November 12th and 13th. And I think, Steve, you wanted us to contact Vanessa if we were interested in that?
I think if you want to attend 2 half-day sessions, Zoom sessions, I think you contact Vanessa so we can register you.
So that's been a great opportunity to learn about diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you have not participated in the past, I encourage you to do so, because if you've got your schedule a little bit more flexible because of Zoom, this may be a good opportunity to do that. And I think that's all I've got.
Hey, and just wanted to congratulate Amber. Reason she had to leave was she was receiving, I want to make sure I get this right, an award, I believe, from Simpson College. And it happened to be at 7:30 tonight. So just congratulating her. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right, Mr. Garten, thank you. Everyone, have a good rest of your evening. Good night.
Good night.
All right.